All 6 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi are now streaming on Disney+. The episodes were premiering every week, except for the first 2 that dropped at the same time. And now that it's done, I can't wait to talk to you guys about it, but this is going to be a spoiler-filled review of the series, because there's a lot to get into, and there's no way to talk about this properly without getting into some details. Taking place 9 years before A New Hope, and basically 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, we find Obi-Wan on the planet Tatooine, trying to look over the Lars family, especially young Luke Skywalker, and making sure that no one from the Empire comes looking for him. But he's also keeping tabs on Leia on Alderaan, who is with the Organa family. And when some things do happen which involve the Empire, which could jeopardize this exact fact, Obi-Wan is forced back into action, and that means he might have to deal with his old apprentice, Anakin Skywalker. In case you can't tell, I'm on vacation right now. This is my hotel room. I'm currently with my folks, and so I'm recording this quite literally on the fly. And so there are going to be some reviews that are delayed over the rest of the week because I'm not near a theater right now. And this I could do because it's streaming online. But I was very excited to talk about this, and so I decided to take some time out. It's an interesting time to be someone of a Star Wars fan, especially if you were born with the prequels, because you have to look at the fandom that has come since then. Take a look back to the early 2000s when we got the first couple of movies especially. The fandom was at a point which they didn't want anything to do with the prequels. And a lot of revisionism has taken place since then that some folks forget the fact that there was a time when they were outright hated. And at the time now, when they're so much more loved, and there's so much more appreciation given to them, this show has arrived at an opportune moment. And it's great because it offers a lot of retribution, redemption chances in terms of making certain things a lot better, but also connecting them to the series that we've seen. And Obi-Wan Kenobi is a great bridge between the prequels and the original trilogy, in particular for its lead character. Seeing Ewan McGregor in this role again, just fully give into it, is fantastic. He does an excellent job. And every single time he's on screen, it's like not a day has passed since Revenge of the Sith. It doesn't feel like 17 years since that movie. It really feels like this was like yesterday. Like you just watched Revenge of the Sith. He just finished wrapping filming on that and just dove right back in. And he plays a much more aged version of Obi-Wan, someone who's obviously been through a lot. But he's also cut himself off from the optimism and hope that can come with the Force. He's at this point now where after everything that's happened with Anakin, he's given up on that. And so finding that spark of hope again in things is a vital part of this show's thematic elements. And that's what it essentially deals with. And I think they handle that really, really well. I think the writing, the direction by Deborah Chow, who has done exceptional work on The Mandalorian already, has done incredibly here. I think aside from a few missteps here and there, maybe towards episode 4 or something like that, I think she absolutely crushed it throughout this entire series. I loved so much of what I was watching. But let's talk about the man of the hour in many ways, the big reason a lot of people were excited to see this show, Hayden Christensen, who returns as Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader. Now, there are some things to be said about the fact that it's him in the suit. For the most part, there are some moments where obviously stuntmen are used, someone taller maybe to impose like Vader's figure, but there are moments when you see Christensen, like you know it's him in the suit. And the performance that comes through it, it really is great to see because, again, so many misalignments happened years ago. Again, I just come back to that retribution. And he's talked about it even at Star Wars Celebration, how nice it is to see the fandom embracing the prequels and the stuff that they did years ago. And seeing him in this show, eventually in episode 5, unmasked and in a flashback sequence on Coruscant, was really nice. And his performance is excellent. Let's talk about the voice of Vader because there's been some discussion regarding what's going on over there. So James Earl Jones obviously is the man behind it all, but there is a bit of a caveat. When Book of Boba Fett came out and you saw the de-aged Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill was on set. But he recorded the lines and then they ran it through this AI thing called Respeecher so that he could sound younger and more in line with Return of the Jedi Luke. And so that whole thing was given a bit of criticism at first, but also lots of remarks like, wow, that's amazing. It's uncanny how they're able to do that. Obviously, the actors are signing off on this, and so it appears that some of the stuff with Vader's lines in this have been done with that. And there's been some theories that he didn't record any lines at all and that it was all put together with dialogue that they found in other archival footage of the Star Wars series. I'm going to assume that he recorded these lines and then they ran it through that AI, because James Earl Jones is 91 years old, and even though he still sounds great, I mean, as of a few years ago, he, like the last big voiceover thing he did, he still got it. But they obviously wanted to make it sound a little more closer to the original trilogy, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did. I guess we'll find out more in the coming days, but either way, they've done a really, really good job with Vader. He sounds menacing, of course, but he is really terrifying in this, especially in episode 3 when he first really shows up. There's a scene with him and Obi-Wan, which is this obvious match where Obi-Wan gets the shit kicked out of him, and makes sense because he's completely detached from everything. He's completely rusty at the controls as we speak, and obviously when he's fighting Vader, who is now much more experienced than he was in Revenge of the Sith, he's kicking Obi-Wan's ass. He starts to drag him through the fire at one point, like Revenge of the Sith when he burned on Mustafar, which was really crazy to see. And again, all of that stuff really, really well handled. And the eventual connection that you're seeing build as a result of that, and the trauma and things that Obi-Wan is having to overcome in order to eventually take on Anakin again, is again a very vital part of the show, finding that spark again. And the eventual rematch that you get in the series finale that just premiered is phenomenal. It is absolutely brilliantly executed, and the final moments of that fight are among my favorites when it comes to Vader or Anakin in general. And Christensen is excellent in those moments. It's just a wonderfully done thing, and you hear him talking through the mask, but it's all broken up, so you can hear parts of Anakin Skywalker's voice and Vader's voice sort of distorted. Really, really great stuff. In all of this, I've kind of lost track of the main villain of this, and those are the Inquisitors, but especially the third sister, played by Moses Ingram. She is really good in this, but it also really helps when you're watching the show as you're exploring her character, what's going on with her. When she first shows up, it seems a little awkward. She's not fully sure what she's doing, and there are a lot of reckless decisions that she's making. And she's constantly called out on this by the other Inquisitors, in particular the Grand Inquisitor, played by Rupert Friend. And all of this stuff eventually coalesces because you find out that she was one of the Padawans on Coruscant during Order 66. She was slashed down by Anakin, but she survived. And that particular arc of hers that eventually commences because of it, using Leia Organa as a device to capture her and then take her away in order to lure Obi-Wan out. I think it's a really interesting choice, and eventually it leads to some great moments with a younger Leia, played by Vivian Lyra Blair, who is excellent. I think if Carrie Fisher was around, she'd probably be really proud of this kid. She is so good as this younger version of Leia. At times, it's honestly crazy how much she captures younger Leia. When it comes to the simple stuff, it's great. The cinematography, the direction, the visual effects are extremely brilliant. The cinematography in particular, Chung Hoon Chung did the work on this, and it is exceptional. And I just saw a couple of movies that he just did, that being Last Night in Soho and Uncharted, but I think he does something really great with the Star Wars universe, in particular with lighting. There are some moments with lightsaber battles that he really uses the red and blue just wonderfully, and that especially comes through in the final fight with Vader and Obi-Wan, because that's going to be the talking point. I keep going back to that because that is the big thing people were there for, the rematch of the century. And I think all of that was executed wonderfully. It's directed really well, it's very well paced, it's a very intense show, you're constantly in the moment with it, and it has some really well realized characters, and I am really happy with how this show turned out. Are there issues? There are some things that I think could have been a lot better. For instance, I thought episode 4, like I mentioned earlier briefly, was easily the weakest one. It just felt like Jedi Fallen Order playing out again, which was cool, but it became a little too similar to Jedi Fallen Order. At the point where it's like Fortress Inquisitorius, which is on Nerve, you're kind of expecting this thing to be an impeccable, like impenetrable fortress. And now it's been penetrated twice, and in almost the same exact way. There's the flooding that happens both times in that game and in this one. And that's just crazy. So I don't know. And it felt like a filler episode because then we were eventually going to get to episode 5, which is when some of the cool stuff would happen, especially with Reva and Vader, who realizes who Reva is. And that moment was chilling. Like, really, there's so many great moments in this for each character. I know I've gone on Vader for a long time, but Obi-Wan also, eventually, as he's regaining his strength back and his faith in things, and eventually confronting him, all of it coalesces really, really nicely and comes together wonderfully. So yeah, despite some flaws here and there, some things are a bit too silly at first. Like some people have made note of how there's a moment with a tree in episode 1. Which was kind of funny, but okay, fine. There's some awkward moments here and there. I don't take criticism of the girl outrunning adults though, because the way I see it is this. If you've been to Target and you've seen parents chasing their kids, then you know those kids, they're freaking fast. So I'm sure a 10-year-old can outrun adults pretty easily. They can get through all kinds of corners and shit, man. Like, don't underestimate kids when you're chasing them. And before I wrap up, Natalie Holt's score. Fantastic. I mean, I've loved her music in Loki. I think she's really good over here as well. She incorporates certain themes in eventually, which was really great to hear. And John Williams' theme for Obi-Wan also comes together really nicely. And before I go, one last thing. Qui-Gon showing up at the end, that was great. I was very happy about that. That was the last thing that I was on my list. I said, here's what I expect will happen in this show. But this show gave me so much more than that. It gave me a very interesting story, but it also gave me the stuff that I was expecting to see from an Obi-Wan show. And so I got the whole package. I mean, if you were somebody who went in with certain expectations, patience, because you'll get all of those things by the end. And my hair is weird. And I can't recommend this series enough. I think it's really great. Like I said, barring a few little things here and there, I can't wait to see what more comes in the Star Wars universe. I'm going to give Obi-Wan Kenobi an A. Really happy with this entire series. Just really pleased with everything that I've seen. And I mean, the last hour of this, the final episode, is genuinely one of my favorite things I've seen in Star Wars ever. Like, I loved it. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Leave them in the comments below. Let me know. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.